Chosen one, stop for a moment and pay attention to what you are feeling right now. There is a shift taking place, and whether you can explain it or not, some part of you already knows it is real. The atmosphere around you feels different. Not dramatically different, not in a way that can be measured or easily described, but in a way your spirit recognizes before your mind can make sense of it. That is not an accident. In a world overflowing with distractions, endless choices, and constant noise, something guided you to these words at this exact moment. You did not stumble onto this message by chance. A deeper part of your awareness, a part that has been quietly observing your journey all along, brought you here for a reason. June 13th is far more than another date passing across a calendar. It represents a doorway, a dividing line between what has been and what is preparing to emerge. It marks a threshold between the version of life you've known and a reality that has been waiting beyond your current perspective. If these words are reaching you now, understand something important. You have not arrived too early, and you have not arrived too late. You are standing exactly where you need to be. The timing is not random. It is precise. But what is unfolding is not meant to be understood by everyone. Many people will hear these words and move on. Others will listen but never truly absorb their meaning. Only those who are ready for a deeper awakening will feel the truth moving beneath the surface. Only those who have endured enough challenges, enough uncertainty, enough inner transformation will recognize themselves in what is being revealed. If that recognition is happening within you right now, trust it. Trust the feeling that brought you here. Some opportunities arrive because of coincidence. Others arrive because you have finally become ready to receive them. Perhaps you have already noticed it, that strange feeling that something is changing, that subtle tension that appears without explanation, that quiet sense that life is preparing to move in a different direction. Even though nothing obvious seems to have changed yet, you try to dismiss it, but it keeps returning. You tell yourself it is only your imagination, yet the feeling remains. The truth is that your imagination is not creating this sensation. It is responding to something real. The shift is already begun. For days, maybe even weeks, you have been moving through a preparation phase without fully realizing it. Emotions you thought were buried have started resurfacing. Old memories have appeared unexpectedly. Certain patterns that once defined your daily experience are beginning to break apart. You may have found yourself reflecting on parts of your past that you thought no longer mattered. You may have watched relationships change without understanding why. Some people seem to be drifting away from your life. Certain situations may be dissolving despite your efforts to hold them together. At times, it may have felt confusing. At times, it may have felt painful. But what if none of it is happening against you? What if everything unfolding is actually happening for you? The human mind often mistakes transformation for chaos because transformation rarely arrives in a comfortable form. Before a new chapter can begin, the old chapter must release its hold. Before something greater can enter your life, space must be created for it. That process is not always gentle. It requires the removal of what no longer belongs. Certain people cannot accompany you where you are going. Certain habits cannot survive the next level of your growth. Certain attachments were only meant to serve a temporary purpose. And perhaps most difficult of all, certain versions of yourself cannot cross into this next phase. The identity that once protected you may now be limiting you. The beliefs that once helped you survive may now be preventing you from expanding. The fears that once kept you safe may now be standing between you and the future, trying to reach you. This is why what feels like loss is often preparation. What feels like uncertainty is often realignment. You are not watching your life fall apart. You are witnessing the removal of what no longer matches the person you are becoming. There are rare moments when the rhythm of the universe seems to intensify, moments when events accelerate beneath the surface and invisible forces begin repositioning everything with surprising speed. June 13th carries that kind of energy. It functions as a powerful intersection where different possibilities begin separating into distinct paths. One path continues repeating familiar cycles, the same emotional loops, the same limitations, the same struggles that feel comfortable simply because they are known. The other path leads somewhere entirely different. It leads toward growth, expansion, elevation, and possibilities that may have once seemed beyond reach. What most people fail to understand is that this transition cannot be forced. You do not enter a new reality through control. You do not reach it through pressure. You align with it through awareness, through inner shifts, through changes in perception, through the gradual transformation of how you view yourself and the world around you. That is why you are not simply listening to this message, you're responding to a call. Something greater than your current circumstances is inviting you into alignment. And when you begin looking back over the recent weeks and months of your life, you may start seeing evidence that this process has been unfolding for much longer than you realized. The signs did not appear all at once. They arrived quietly. Small moments, subtle nudges, unexplainable instincts, feelings that seemed irrational at the time. There were moments when something inside you whispered that you should stop and pay attention. There were situations where your intuition knew the answer long before logic caught up. There were coincidences so precise they felt impossible to dismiss. The more honestly you examine those experiences, the more clearly you will recognize that they were never random. They were clues, they were signals, and as those signals begin connecting together, you may discover that what seemed like isolated moments were actually preparing you for what comes next. Looking back now, you could probably identify moments that seemed ordinary at the time but carried far greater significance than you realized. Certain messages appeared exactly when your spirit needed reassurance. Certain words found you during periods of uncertainty. Certain encounters arrived at precisely the right moment, as if something beyond your understanding had arranged them. Yet, like many people, you may have dismissed those experiences. You may have convinced yourself they meant nothing. You may have explained them away as coincidence, imagination, or simple overthinking. But what if those moments were far more important than you allowed yourself to believe? Every one of those experiences served a purpose. They were never random interruptions, they were preparation. The universe rarely begins with dramatic revelations. It does not immediately demand your attention with overwhelming force. Instead, it communicates through subtle impressions, through feelings that linger longer than expected, through repeated signs that seem too perfectly timed to ignore, through gentle invitations to pay closer attention. The first stage is always quiet. Awareness is tested before transformation begins. The signals arrive softly, waiting to see whether you are willing to notice them. For a long time, that is exactly what was happening in your life. You were being guided, little by little, not pushed, not forced, simply invited to wake up to something larger than the reality you had become accustomed to. But now the energy has changed. The invitation has become a calling. The whisper has become a direct message. What once approached gently is now standing directly in front of you. Because there is a version of yourself that cannot accompany you into the next chapter, that statement is not criticism, it is not judgment. It does not mean there is anything wrong with who you have been. In fact, the version of you that exists today served an important purpose. That version learned how to survive difficult seasons. It learned how to endure uncertainty. It learned how to navigate environments where caution felt necessary. It learned how to adapt to situations that demanded restraint, patience, and self-protection. Perhaps that version learned to remain invisible in order to avoid conflict. Perhaps it learned to lower expectations to avoid disappointment. Perhaps it became comfortable settling for less, because hoping for more once felt dangerous. Whatever form it took, it helped you reach this point. But survival is not the same as expansion. The identity that carried you through previous chapters was designed for a different assignment. It was built for endurance. The future unfolding before you requires something else entirely. It requires visibility. It requires courage. It requires the willingness to stop shrinking and start occupying the space that was always meant for you. It requires greater awareness, greater confidence, and a deeper commitment to becoming who you truly are. This is why June 13th feels so significant. The energy of this moment is not simply introducing a new chapter into your life. It is gradually dissolving the identity that no longer matches the future waiting for you. And yes, that process can feel confusing. It can feel uncomfortable. There may be moments when you question what is happening, moments when familiar emotional patterns begin disappearing and you feel uncertain about what replaces them. But transformation has never depended on comfort. Growth does not pause until conditions feel convenient. It does not wait until fear disappears. It does not request permission from the parts of you that are afraid to change. It moves forward with certainty. It continues unfolding whether the mind fully understands it or not. Its purpose is simple: to remove what no longer aligns with your highest path and create room for what does. That is why what appears to be loss is often evolution in disguise. Think about the periods when you believed nothing was happening, the months when progress felt invisible, the seasons when every effort seemed to produce little or no result. There were times when it appeared as though life had forgotten about you. Times when you questioned whether your goals were moving farther away instead of closer. But the truth is that you were never abandoned. You were never blocked. You were never behind. You were being prepared. What looked like stagnation was actually a period of internal construction. What felt like delay was a carefully orchestrated process unfolding according to a timing far more precise than you could see. Beneath the surface, pieces were being arranged. Lessons were being integrated. Strength was being developed. Awareness was expanding. There is a reason certain opportunities did not arrive earlier. Had they appeared before you were ready, they might have overwhelmed you. You could have mishandled them. You could have lost them through fear, doubt, or lack of preparation. The blessings themselves were never the issue. The timing was. And now something inside you has changed. Not because of a single event, not because of one breakthrough moment, but because of everything you have survived, everything you have learned, and everything you have released along the way. The person listening to these words today is not the same person who stood here months ago. There is greater awareness now, greater understanding, greater readiness, and readiness is what activates movement. The waiting period is ending. The energy begins shifting now. Even as you listen, there may be a feeling that is difficult to describe, a subtle opening somewhere deep within your awareness, a sense that something is moving beneath the visible surface of your life. You may not fully understand it yet. You may not be able to explain it to anyone else. But if you become still enough, you can feel it. A door is opening, not with fanfare, not with dramatic announcements, not with obvious external proof. This first door opens internally. It begins as a shift in perception, a new way of seeing yourself, a new way of interpreting what is happening around you, a new understanding that possibilities exist where limitations once appeared. And once that internal doorway opens, external reality begins responding. Ideas emerge where confusion once existed. Guidance appears where uncertainty once dominated. Opportunities reveal themselves where obstacles once seemed permanent. Connections begin forming. Insights arrive unexpectedly. Hidden pathways gradually become visible. What once felt impossible begins looking achievable. And right now, chosen one, you are standing directly at the edge of that transition. This is the threshold where momentum begins building, whether you feel fully prepared or not. This is the moment where the next phase starts moving toward you, even before you take the first visible step. The real question is no longer whether change is coming. The real question is whether you will trust yourself enough to walk forward when the invitation appears, because forces are already moving behind the scenes. You cannot see them with your eyes. You cannot measure them with logic. Yet their influence is already touching your life. Resistance that once felt immovable is beginning to weaken. Obstacles that seemed permanent are quietly shifting out of position. Circumstances that looked fixed are becoming flexible. This is the stage where life begins responding differently, not because you forced outcomes into existence, not because you struggled harder, not because you controlled every detail, but because your internal alignment is finally matching what was always waiting for you. You may soon notice opportunities appearing unexpectedly, conversations emerging at exactly the right time, sudden changes of direction that initially make no sense but later reveal their purpose. The precision of these events may feel almost impossible to explain. That is because they are not random. They are part of a larger orchestration. The unseen is beginning to arrange pieces in your favor. Paths are being adjusted. Timelines are shifting. Obstacles you never even knew existed are being removed from your route, and the more you trust this movement instead of resisting it, the more naturally you will be carried toward what is already unfolding. But every new timeline requires one final process. As the future begins activating, the past must release its grip, and this is often the most emotionally intense stage of all. You may watch certain relationships slowly fade away without receiving the closure you hoped for. You may see situations unravel without clear explanations. You may witness plans collapsing at the exact moment they seemed secure. At first glance, it can feel confusing. It can feel unfair. It can even feel frightening. Yet what is being removed is not leaving because you failed. It is leaving because the next chapter cannot fully arrive until the previous one finally makes room for it. And that realization becomes even more important as the next stage of this journey begins to reveal itself. What is happening around you right now may look like loss on the surface, but if you look deeper, you will discover that something entirely different is taking place. The instinctive part of the human mind immediately interprets endings as rejection. It sees distance and assumes abandonment. It sees things falling away and assumes something valuable is being taken. Yet the deeper truth is often the opposite. What is exiting your life during this season is not being removed to harm you. It is being cleared because it can no longer travel with you into what comes next. There is a difference between losing something and outgrowing it. Many people spend years trying to preserve situations, relationships, habits, and identities that no longer match who they are becoming. They cling to them because familiarity creates a sense of safety, even when something has stopped supporting their growth, even when it has become restrictive, predictable, or draining. The comfort of what is known could feel more attractive than the uncertainty of what is possible. That is one of the greatest paradoxes of transformation. The mind often prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar expansion. But your soul operates differently. Your soul is not attached to comfort in the same way. It is attached to growth. It recognizes when a chapter has completed its purpose. It understands when a lesson has been learned. It knows when a connection, a circumstance, or a version of yourself has reached the end of its role. And when that happens, it begins guiding you toward release. Even when the process feels emotionally challenging. That is why what is happening now should not be viewed as punishment. Nothing is being taken away to make your life smaller. Your reality is being refined. The universe is not reducing your opportunities. It is filtering your environment. It is gradually removing what no longer resonates with the energy you are entering. Anything that cannot harmonize with the next version of your life naturally begins losing its hold. Sometimes the process is subtle. Other times it feels dramatic. Yet the purpose remains the same: to create space, to create room for something more aligned, to create an environment capable of supporting the future that is approaching. And yes, there will be moments when this feels uncomfortable. There may be days when your heart wants to hold on to what your spirit has already released. There may be moments when memories seem stronger than your vision for the future. You may find yourself looking backward, wondering whether you should return to what is familiar. But every transformation contains that temptation. Every awakening includes moments when the old reality attempts to pull your attention back toward itself, not because it is stronger than your future, but because it is familiar. Familiarity has a powerful emotional gravity. It convinces you that what is known must be safer than what is unknown. Yet your soul already understands something your mind is still learning. Holding on to what is no longer aligned does not protect your future. It delays it. That is why some things must be allowed to fall away naturally, not because they were bad, not because they failed, not because they were mistakes, but because their role has been completed, and what is making its way toward you now is capable of matching who you are becoming far more accurately than what you are leaving behind. At the same time, another transformation is occurring beneath the surface, one that may be even more significant than the changes happening around you. Your perception is changing. The way you interpret reality is evolving. You're beginning to notice details that once escaped your awareness. You're seeing patterns where you once saw randomness. You're questioning assumptions that previously seemed unquestionable. Ideas that felt permanent are becoming flexible. Beliefs you once accepted without examination are being brought into the light for re-evaluation. This can feel unsettling at first. Many people mistake this stage for confusion. But confusion is not what is happening. You are awakening. There is a profound difference. Confusion disconnects you from truth. Awakening exposes truth that was previously hidden. When old perspectives begin breaking apart, the process can feel disorienting because the mind naturally seeks certainty. It wants familiar explanations. It wants clear answers. It wants the comfort of established beliefs. Yet growth requires something else. Growth requires the willingness to release outdated interpretations so that greater understanding can emerge. You are moving beyond limitations that once defined your experience. You are stepping outside old conditioning. You are beginning to see that many of the boundaries you accepted were never permanent realities. They were inherited stories, learned assumptions, temporary frameworks that no longer reflect who you are becoming. As this awareness expands, there may be moments when everything feels unfamiliar. That is normal. Awakening always dismantles before it rebuilds. It removes before it replaces. It questions before it clarifies. What feels uncertain today may become the foundation of extraordinary clarity tomorrow. You are not losing your direction. You're expanding beyond perspectives that have become too small for your current level of awareness. And as your inner world begins aligning with this higher understanding, your external choices naturally begin changing as well. You respond differently. You notice opportunities more quickly. You trust your intuition more deeply. You stop chasing what is not meant for you. You become more selective about where your energy goes. You begin recognizing possibilities that would have remained invisible to your previous self. This is where true awareness starts transforming reality, and perhaps you have already felt the first signs of it. Perhaps there has been a subtle pull within you recently, a feeling that something is drawing your attention toward a new direction, not through force, not through pressure, but through a quiet inner magnetism that refuses to disappear. You cannot fully explain it, yet you cannot ignore it either. Something keeps calling your attention forward. Certain ideas feel more meaningful. Certain opportunities seem unusually attractive. Certain possibilities keep returning to your awareness regardless of how often you dismiss them. This is not random curiosity. It is alignment beginning to take shape. Destiny rarely announces itself with complete instructions. It rarely reveals the entire path at once. Instead, it guides you through incremental steps. One realization leads to another. One decision creates the conditions for the next. One act of trust opens a door that was previously hidden. The process unfolds gradually, because growth itself unfolds gradually, layer by layer, choice by choice, awareness by awareness. And as you continue moving forward, that inner pull becomes stronger. What once felt uncertain becomes recognizable. What once felt distant becomes attainable. What once seemed impossible begins appearing within reach. You are no longer searching for your path. Your path is beginning to call you, but there is something important that often happens immediately before a major breakthrough, and many people misunderstand it when it arrives. Fear. Right before a significant transformation becomes visible, fear often rises unexpectedly from the shadows. It may appear as hesitation, it may appear as self-doubt, it may appear as an overwhelming urge to retreat back into familiar territory. Suddenly the old life seems safer. The old identity seems more comfortable. The old limitations seem easier to accept. This is not because something is wrong. It is because you are approaching a threshold. Fear emerges when growth becomes real. It appears when change is no longer theoretical. It surfaces when the future begins asking for participation instead of preparation. Many people interpret this fear as a warning sign and turn back, but fear is not necessarily telling you to stop. Often it is revealing exactly where your final attachments still exist. It exposes the beliefs that remain connected to your previous identity. It highlights the places where uncertainty still feels threatening. It shows you what is ready to be released. That is why fear loses much of its power the moment you recognize its purpose. It is not an enemy. It is not proof that you are making a mistake. It is evidence that transformation is close. It is the doorway standing between who you were and who you are becoming. And once you walk through that doorway, the fear that seems so powerful often disappears with surprising speed. Its purpose completed, it loses its influence and fades into the background. Beyond that threshold lies something many people spend years hoping for. Expansion. Not confusion. Not limitation. Not struggle. Expansion. There was a time when your greatest dream seemed impossibly distant. A time when certain possibilities felt too unrealistic to take seriously. A time when hope itself may have felt risky. But something inside you is changing now. The version of yourself that automatically doubted what was possible is beginning to lose its hold. A new state of receptivity is emerging. You are becoming more open to opportunities, more open to possibilities, more open to realities that once seemed beyond reach. And this shift is not about luck. It is not about random chance. It is not about hoping the universe suddenly chooses you. It is about alignment, because when your inner state finally begins matching the reality you desire, that reality no longer feels distant. It begins moving toward you naturally. And what happens next reveals just how powerful that alignment can truly become. One of the greatest challenges people face during periods of transformation is not learning how to pursue what they want. It is learning how to receive it. Most people spend years training themselves to struggle, to push harder, to prove their worth through effort and endurance. They become comfortable with striving because striving feels familiar. Yet, when life finally begins opening doors, when opportunities begin arriving, when support appears, and when long-awaited blessings start moving closer, an entirely different challenge emerges. The challenge becomes believing that you are allowed to receive what is arriving. That is where many people hesitate. They question whether it will last. They wonder whether it is real. They search for reasons to doubt it. They assume something must be wrong because things are finally beginning to flow. But you are being asked to embrace a different perspective now. You are being invited to trust that what is entering your life is not random. It is not temporary. It is not something that accidentally found its way to you. It is connected to every lesson you have survived, every obstacle you have overcome, every moment that forced you to grow beyond your previous limitations. Nothing about this season is disconnected from your journey. The opportunities approaching you now are linked to the person you have become. That is why what once appeared impossible is beginning to feel different. The impossible is no longer standing in the distance as a fantasy. It is moving closer. It is becoming probable. It is becoming natural. And eventually, it becomes inevitable. There comes a moment in every major transformation when a person realizes there is no path backward, not because they are trapped, not because they are being forced into change, but because they have evolved beyond the version of themselves that once existed. You may already be noticing signs of this. Imagine trying to return to an old mindset that once felt normal. Imagine returning to old patterns that once defined your daily life. Imagine stepping back into environments that once shaped your decisions. Something inside you immediately recognizes that it no longer fits. The conversations feel different. The habits feel different. The energy feels different. What once felt comfortable now feels restrictive. What once felt exciting now feels uninspiring. What once felt necessary now feels outdated. This is not arrogance, this is growth. Your awareness has expanded beyond previous boundaries, and awareness has an interesting quality. Once it expands, it cannot truly return to what it was before. You can remember your old perspective. You can remember your old perspective. You can understand it. You can even revisit it temporarily, but you cannot genuinely become it again. That chapter has already completed its purpose. This is why you are approaching what can only be described as a point of no return. At first, that realization can feel overwhelming. The human mind likes options. It likes escape routes. It likes the idea that it can always return to what is familiar if things become difficult. But there is tremendous power hidden within this moment, because when the old path disappears behind you, your energy stops being divided. Your attention stops moving backward. Your focus becomes concentrated. And suddenly, all of your momentum begins flowing toward the future. You are no longer standing between two realities. You are entering one. The movement has already started. The process is already underway. The next chapter is not waiting for permission. It is unfolding, and what remains is your willingness to fully participate in it. Chosen one, there is something important to understand about the moment you are living through right now. This is not a future event. This is not a possibility that may happen someday. The shift is already occurring right now. While you listen, while you reflect, while you continue moving through your daily life, different realities are being created through awareness, energy, and alignment. One direction continues repeating familiar experiences. It presents the same lessons wearing different faces, the same limitations appearing in different forms, the same emotional cycles disguised as new circumstances. The other direction operates differently. It is not built upon who you used to be. It is not based on old fears. It is not connected to previous limitations. It is connected to who you are becoming. That distinction changes everything, because most people assume they can force their way into a new reality through effort alone. But transformation does not work that way. Effort matters, action matters, commitment matters, yet none of those things replace alignment. The new reality emerges when your inner state begins matching it. It emerges when you stop carrying identities that no longer belong. It emerges when you release what no longer resonates. It emerges when you trust the next step before seeing the entire staircase. This is how the transition happens, not through force, through becoming, and whether you fully recognize it or not, you are already being pulled toward that next version of reality. There are possibilities surrounding you at this very moment that remain invisible only because your awareness has not completely aligned with them yet. Think about that for a moment. There are conversations that have not happened yet, opportunities that have not revealed themselves yet, connections that are moving towards you even now, doors that already exist but remain just beyond your current field of perception. And the remarkable part is that these openings rarely announce themselves dramatically. They arrive quietly. A sudden realization, an unexpected invitation, a conversation that changes everything, a seemingly ordinary moment that creates an extraordinary shift. Most people miss these moments because they are distracted by looking for something bigger, but destiny often arrives in subtle forms. A single idea, a single choice, a single encounter, one fragment at a time. And because your awareness is expanding, you are becoming more capable of recognizing these moments when they appear. You will feel them, not because they are familiar, but because they resonate. Something inside you will immediately recognize their significance. That is how aligned opportunities reveal themselves, not through certainty, through resonance. At the same time, something else is changing. Attachments that once felt absolutely necessary are beginning to loosen their grip. There was a time when you believed certain outcomes were essential for happiness, certain people, certain goals, certain expectations. You held on to them because they gave structure to your vision of the future. Yet as your awareness expands, you may notice that many of those attachments no longer carry the same emotional weight. What once felt indispensable now feels optional. What once felt urgent now feels distant. What once felt necessary now feels incomplete. This is not a sign that you have lost passion. It is evidence that you are evolving. Your desires are becoming more aligned with your true path. The universe is not removing what matters. It is helping you distinguish between what you thought you needed and what genuinely belongs in your future. That distinction creates freedom, because fulfillment was never meant to come from clinging. It comes from alignment. It comes from allowing the right experiences to meet you naturally. And what is aligning with you now carries a greater level of harmony than anything that had to be released. Pay close attention because this next stage often surprises people. As alignment strengthens, synchronicities begin increasing. Not occasionally, consistently. You begin noticing patterns that seem impossible to ignore. Thoughts appear and then immediately reflect themselves through external events. People arrive at exactly the right moment. Information appears precisely when needed. Circumstances connect together with astonishing precision. The rational mind may attempt to dismiss these experiences, yet the frequency becomes difficult to ignore. Because these moments are not random, they are signals, they are confirmations. They are reminders that you are moving in harmony with something larger than your current understanding. The universe communicates through timing, through symbolism, through alignment. And as you acknowledge these signs, your sensitivity to them becomes even stronger. They are not appearing to confuse you. They are appearing to reassure you, to remind you that you are supported, to remind you that your path is unfolding with extraordinary precision. But beneath all of these external developments lies the deepest transformation of all: identity. The story you tell yourself about who you are is changing. The limitations that once defined you are dissolving. The assumptions that once controlled your choices are losing their authority. And as that identity shifts, everything else begins shifting with it. Your decisions evolve, your standards evolve, your reactions evolve, your expectations evolve. The way you carry yourself changes, the way you interpret challenges changes, the way you recognize opportunities changes, because identity influences everything. Once you see yourself differently, reality begins organizing itself around that new perception. and there is no returning to the old story after that. The previous narrative loses its power. The previous version loses its control. A new version emerges naturally through awareness, not through force, not through performance, through realization. And with that realization, comes something incredibly powerful. A quiet confidence, not the kind that demands attention, not the kind that seeks validation, not the kind that needs constant approval. This confidence is different. It is calm, steady, grounded, unshakable. It develops because you stop needing certainty before taking action. You stop needing permission before trusting yourself. You stop requiring proof before following your intuition. The doubts that once dominated your thinking begin losing influence, not because every question has been answered, but because you no longer need every answer before moving forward. You trust yourself. You trust your timing. You trust your path. And that trust changes everything. It allows you to step into opportunities that once intimidated you. It allows you to speak truths that once remained hidden. It allows you to embrace parts of yourself that previously stayed dormant. And suddenly the future feels less like something you must chase and more like something you are growing into. Every release, every awakening, every release, every awakening, every challenge, every lesson has been leading toward this moment, the moment when internal transformation begins producing visible results. This is where manifestation accelerates, not as an abstract idea, not as wishful thinking, as reality. Gradually at first, then unmistakably, you begin seeing evidence. Openings appear, situations resolve, movement replaces stagnation. What once felt blocked begins flowing, and through all of it, a profound realization emerges. You were never chasing something outside yourself. You were becoming the version of yourself capable of receiving what was already aligned with you. And now the world around you is beginning to reflect that truth. Something profound is happening. Reality itself is responding differently. The same life that once seemed resistant is becoming more responsive. The same world that once felt slow is beginning to move. The same circumstances that once produced confusion are generating clarity. Not because reality suddenly changed, because you changed. Your awareness changed. Your energy changed. Your alignment changed. And as that transformation continues, you will notice how much more quickly life responds to your focus, your intention, and your presence. This can feel exhilarating. It can also feel overwhelming because manifestation begins accelerating. But understand this clearly. You are not losing control of your life. You're finally stepping into conscious participation with it. And that realization opens the door to the next stage of the journey, one that will reveal just how much is possible when alignment becomes your natural state.